business credit and take advantage of some of these credit and loans through the SBA for the coronavirus relief package.
Okay, Teresa, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And I truly feel like if I were to roll back the clock 6 weeks, this would be a different conversation, right? But now we're in the midst of a new reality. So I want to try to tie it into now, but I also want to help you think about your business for the future, because this will end and you want your business to survive and you want it to thrive. And so the tips that we're going to talk about here initially with business credit, they may be a little different right now, but they're long term, right? They're long term strategies for you to grow your business. And then the relief programs, those are short term. Those are designed to be short term relief to help businesses, stay in business during this crisis. And so I'll touch on those. So let's start with talking about business credit. With business credit, your business can have its own credit reports, just like you have credit reports with Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Your business can have credit reports with Equifax, Experian, and Dun & Bradstreet. So Equifax and Experian both have separate commercial divisions that collect information about businesses. And it's helpful to build business credit for a variety of reasons. Tara touched on one of them, or maybe you did, Teresa, which is the idea that when you have business credit, it may open options for you in terms of business lending. And eventually, as you build strong business credit, you can borrow more in the name of your business and less in your personal name. It allows you to really separate your business and personal finances. And so the key to this, it's not quite as straightforward as it is with personal credit. There are no regulations at all around business credit reports. So anyone can check your business credit. You don't have the right to a free business credit report every year like you do with annualcreditreport.com. They don't have to tell you if they turn you down based on your business credit report. So there's just a lot of mystery around it. But that's what we do at NAV is, we show you your free business credit reports. nav.com/dualpreneur is the link to check that out. You can check and see if you have that. It's completely free, won't affect your credit score. And then our goal ultimately is to help match, business owners to lending options. So that's changed a little bit the past 4 weeks. It's changed quite a bit, but ultimately that's, one of the things that we try to do is to leverage that credit that you're building, business and personal, to get better financing. So if you have not checked yet to see if you have a business credit report, you can do that with the NAV site. So you can go in there, you'll type in your business name, then your zip code, and we'll ask you, is this your business? If you say yes, then we'll show you if there's reports. You may find that you don't have business credit, and that's because unlike personal credit, not everyone is required to report to these agencies. Well, actually, there's never a requirement, but it's pretty standard on the consumer side. You get a mortgage, you get a car loan, you get a credit card. They report to all three consumer credit reporting agencies almost always. But on the business side, it's much less consistent. So you could have an account with one credit card company that reports to one of the business credit bureaus, but not the others. Or you can have a vendor account that reports to all three or two of them. And so you typically have to be a little more proactive about building business credit. And in fact, I know we have a business credit building checklist. And Tara has that from our last presentation. So we'll make sure that we find a way to get that to you if you are interested in the process of building business credit. Now, right now, it has become more complicated. A lot of lenders have pulled back and they're either halting lending to small business or they're focusing on their most lucrative customers. But there's still two things that you can do to build business credit right now, regardless of what's going on with your personal credit. And one is you can get vendor accounts. So these are accounts with companies that sell things like shipping boxes and Keurig cups for your coffee maker and janitorial supplies. And they will extend you what's called net 30 terms. That means you have 30 days to pay the bill. And these companies don't check personal credit. They do report to business credit. So that can be a great way to start establishing accounts that appear on your business credit, buy things you'd buy anyway. I don't want people to spend money they, don't need to spend. So buy things you would normally buy anyway, but just strategically buy them through these companies that report, and then pay on time, and that helps build your business credit. And in the business credit building checklist, we have a link there, and I can give you a short link here, nav.com/vendors with an S, and that will also take you to a list of vendors that are easy to get started with. So that's one of the easiest ways that many people start establishing business credit. And then another way that they start is they get a business credit card that reports to their business credit. So most of the small business credit cards do report to at least one of the major business credit agencies. Some of them report everything to your personal credit. Some of them only report to your personal credit if you default. So you want to understand how the reporting works, both on the personal and the business side. But that can be another way to start building business credits, to get a business credit card through a company that reports, and then pay it on time. Use the card, pay it on time, and that reference then shows up on your business credit. So with those two things in place, you've started. And then the third thing I would say to most of my business audiences, if you're in some kind of specialty business where you need to purchase supplies of some sort, check with your vendors. So if you're buying some inventory for something you're selling, check and see if they will offer you net 30 terms and report to the credit agencies. Because if they do, that's a way to build another business credit reference that can go on your business credit report. And I can tell you that most business owners have never seen their business credit. They aren't doing anything proactive about it. So if you do just that, you're kind of ahead of the game. You're ahead of most people. When you do go to check your business credit for the first time, if you do have a business credit report and it shows not a strong letter grade, in our free account, we show you A, B, C, D as your letter grades to see where you stand, and you want to get up to A eventually. Don't be alarmed, because it doesn't necessarily mean there's something negative. It could just mean there's not enough information to create a low risk score, right? They don't have enough information because you don't have any accounts reporting, and so that's putting you in what's called a higher risk category. So don't worry about that too much when you're getting started. The goal is to see what's on there, make sure it's accurate, dispute it if it's not, and then start working toward building that business credit. And there is a question here from Larissa. You asked what credit score is considered excellent. Typically on Experian, it'll be 80 to 100, because their credit score, Experian IntelliScore, runs from 0 to 100. Dun & Bradstreet, their Paydex score, which is only one of the scores that they have. They have multiple scores with different score ranges, but Paydex is the most well-known one. That's the one we show in a NAV account. It ranges from 0 to 100, and 80 to 100 would be considered excellent. But usually you could also be fine with a B on business credit as well, which would be a little bit lower, not quite as high a score. Some lenders, when it comes to business credit, it's not quite the same with personal credit in terms of like these very distinct scores that you want to reach toward. FICO publishes on the consumer side, if you have a credit score of 720, your mortgage rate on average would be 2.75% or whatever it is today. It's a little bit different, but sometimes they're just looking for any kind of alerts that might alert them that you're high risk. And that might be all they're looking for. Sometimes they are looking for more of a strong score and more credit references. It's kind of as you move up the ladder and you're looking for, bigger and bigger types of business financing, that's when it becomes more important to have a robust business credit profile, because that's what's going to make it easy for you to get terms and to get approved for credit. Does that make sense, Teresa? Yeah. I shouldn't have put you on the spot there. And I'm not done yet. We can still talk about, we could absolutely still talk about the other things we were going to talk about too. So I'm going to wrap up the business credit there, because I know we also want to talk about the COVID relief loans, and I want to have time for that. But if you have more questions, again, I know Tara has the handout, the business credit building checklist, and I'll make sure we have that for you, make that available to you, and we can certainly dive in more. So let's talk about the loans that are out there. The two main loan programs that are available for small business owners who are suffering from the economy right now due to coronavirus. They are the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, EIDL, EIDL, and the other is the Paycheck Protection Program loans, PPP loans. So first of all, I know many of you are in all kinds of different situations. Some of you have a job and a business, and your job, you've been laid off. Some of you might still have a job, but your business clients are not spending, and so your business is suffering. Or maybe you're full-time self-employed, and there's not money coming in from any place. So I truly feel for the stress you're under, and I want to give you a few suggestions for things to look at. I do want to emphasize that I am not a CPA. I'm not a tax professional, attorney, or a financial advisor. And so I can't give any kind of advice like that. And also, and I'm being very careful right now because this is such an emotional, it's a difficult time for many people. There are people who are on the verge of losing their business. And I would never want to steer anyone to anything that would, be potentially detrimental to their business. So I'm really encouraging, if you have questions, to make sure you're talking to your tax professional or your financial advisor or lawyer. But I also want to emphasize that, today is April 10th, and I doubt anything's going to come out over the weekend, but by Monday, these things could change. And I've been updating these stories since the disaster loan first came out about 3.5 weeks ago, and it changes all the time. So do make sure you're looking at up-to-date resources. Check dates when you're reading an article, because I'm not exaggerating when I say things change quickly, and I'll point a couple things out to you in that regard. So the good news is that these EIDL and PPP loans are available to the self-employed and independent contractors. So do not rule them out just because you have a business that doesn't hire external employees. There are some guidelines I'm going to share with you, but they are available, and the fact that if you still are working in your job, that doesn't exclude you from these programs because your business has been impacted. So it's not necessarily an either or calculation. Now, of course, we do have the extended enhanced unemployment that was part of the CARES Act, and that's where they've opened up unemployment to gig workers and the self-employed. I'm not an expert on unemployment, so I'm just going to touch on this, but I get a lot of questions about how this overlaps with the loan program, so I'm just going to mention it. And that provides you with an additional $600 a week from the federal government through unemployment benefits. I did a webinar earlier today where a CPA was on the call, and he got a few questions about, should I apply for the unemployment? My income dropped, or I still have this, part of my income still coming in. And he suggested that you should apply because the worst case is you just don't get approved, right? So he was suggesting that if your income has been affected, whether you work in your own business or work for somebody else, that you go ahead and apply. You do that through your state. You don't go to the federal government to apply for that. Some states are on the ball better than others. I'm in Florida, and it's been an utter mess. They have not gotten, they haven't gotten even to the $600 yet. But if you were affected and you were in my state, I'd say file, because then you need to get in that line, right? So when the funds become available, that you have those options. So unemployment is, for many people, a first step. And, I'd recommend you check that out with your state. All right, so let's go to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL. And this is the one that has become popular because of the $10,000 grant. So I want to explain how that works. So EIDL loans are based on the disaster loan program that's been around through the SBA for a long time. And it's the loan program where if there's a hurricane or a flood or a tornado and a business is impacted, they can apply for a low-cost loan to help cover their operating expenses while they get their business back on its feet. Now, in those disasters, there's usually physical damage. Your workplace has been impacted. This disaster loan is purely economic. It's not a physical disaster, it's an economic disaster. So the SBA modified its program about 3 weeks ago to expand it to, very quickly, all 50 states, to cover economic injury. So it's not about physical injury to your place of business, but it's about the money you've lost. So you apply through the SBA. So I've heard from people who are confused. They think they applied through PPP through the SBA, or they think they applied for this through their lender. The only way to get this disaster loan is from the SBA. They make the decision, they send the money, it's all SBA. There's no other way to get it. Be very careful of scammers because they are out there. We have heard from people who have been ripped off. So you go to sba.gov, and right on the front, you're going to see something about disaster resources. You're going to click a couple screens. You're going to get to the page where it says you can submit your disaster loan application related to COVID-19. And it's a pretty simple application, but it's confusing. It's confusing. It'll ask you for your gross revenues for 2019, and then it'll ask you for your COGS, which is cost of goods sold. Now, for some businesses, that's pretty apparent. You're a restaurant, you should know your COGS. But if you're a service-based business, it's more confusing. Like, what does that mean? So the best example I heard was from a small business development center advisor who suggested, think of it as your operating expenses. What are the expenses you have to pay to keep your business running? If you have an online business, you have to pay for your internet, your web hosting, maybe you have subscriptions for your social media management tool, etc. Those are operating expenses. So in the COGS section, list that and just do the best you can. They're not trying to exclude you here, right? They're trying to make these loans. So once your application is submitted, at some point you will hear from someone at the SBA unless you get turned down. And the only thing that we've seen people turn down for so far is credit. So we can talk about credit in a second. But that loan, that loan was out for about 2.5 weeks, and then the CARES Act was passed. And in the CARES Act, they added this provision that was trying to get money to small businesses faster. And that provision said that you can request an advance of your EIDL loan up to $10,000, and it shall be paid in 3 days after application. Well, no one has seen that money yet, so the 3 days did not happen. I heard they were going to start dispersing funds today, but then I realized it's Good Friday, so I'm not sure that that's even accurate, that the government would be dispersing. I think it's a federal holiday, so I'm hoping we'll start seeing some funds sooner. But the other thing that came out, and I haven't seen official guidance on this from the SBA administrator, but I've seen it from SBA offices, where they're saying due to the high demand, we're going to make the advance $1,000 per employee. So again, I've not confirmed that with the SBA administrator, but like the Massachusetts office of the SBA sent out an email indicating that. It's been indicated in a couple of other places. So we suspect that's probably the way it's going to work. So if you're the only employee in your business, your advance might just be $1,000. Now this advance is money that does not have to be repaid. You do not have to repay it. But there are specific ways you're supposed to use the money, and it's spelled out in my FAQ article, but it's basically working capital needs. So basically the expenses you need to run your business. It's not supposed to be used, for example, to refinance long-term debt. But it could be used to make your payments on your debt, or pay your vendors or suppliers, or pay for that social media, management tool that you need to pay $79 for every month, that kind of thing. Can also include your income. So it can include what you pay yourself. So looking historically at what you paid yourself last year and then averaging that out and then looking at, this immediate impact, it could be used for that. However, I'm going to add PPP here. You can't double dip. So if you get an EIDL loan, it is a loan beyond that advance. So the advance, let's say you get $2,000. It's you and your partner have a business together. You're the two employees, so they advance you $2,000. You don't have to pay that back. But then they also offer you a loan for, let's say, $12,000. If you accept the loan, and it's up to you if you accept it, then you will the interest rate will be 3.75%, and it will have a repayment term of up to 30 years. So this could give you an affordable loan. In addition, there's no payments for the first 12 months. So this could give you some money to pay your operating expenses, let the economy recover, and then, you can work on paying it back at an attractive interest rate. So that's how EIDL and the grant or the advance work. The word grant, I think, is a little bit confusing because we think of a grant like, I'm going to apply for a business grant, and then if I get it, they choose me. This is an advance that they're saying is a grant because you don't have to repay it. So under no circumstances. And if you were turned down for the EIDL due to credit, for example, you still get to keep the advance. You get to keep it and you don't have to pay it back no matter what. There are purposes, though, that you're supposed to use it for. And I would recommend you do that, because if they at some point decide to audit these and you used it for other purposes, that could be a problem. So I would suggest you're very deliberate about keeping records on how you spend this money, whether you get the EIDL or the PPP. So then let's switch over to PPP for a second. So PPP is a separate loan program. It's completely separate. It falls under the SBA umbrella, but it falls under a different umbrella called the 7A loan program. And I will tell you that 7A loans traditionally have been great loans, but they are not easy to get. Like, they often take a month, 2 months to get. And now Congress has passed this law that is supposed to speed it up into a matter of days. So there is a lot of confusion. And I know it's easy to get mad at the banks, but I can see it from both sides, communication with both sides. And it's difficult because they have to process these loans using guidance from the SBA, which in some cases is not clear or may even conflict. And then they have to push it through this system, the E-Tran system. They've set up a secondary system now because it just can't handle this volume. But I just read that each lender can only process a loan every 7 minutes. So you think about some of these lenders, like, what was it, on Friday, Bank of America got 85,000 applications. Well, last year, in the entire country, there were 65,000, or roughly 65,000 SBA loans made. Friday, Bank of America got more than that in applications. So you can see it's not an easy problem to solve, but there are lots of companies, I promise you, and lots of lenders who are trying as fast as they can to solve it, because they want their small business customers to survive too, right? Because it doesn't do them any good. If their small business customers go out of business, that's not good for them either, just from a personal standpoint. And of course, many of us want to support small business. So PPP is the Paycheck Protection Program loan. Listen to that name, Paycheck Protection. It is not the Save Your Business loan. It is the Paycheck Protection loan. So if you look at how it's structured, it's designed primarily to help keep people on the payroll. So what it does is it lets you apply based on 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, and we'll get into that in a second. 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. And then if you use that money primarily toward payroll for the 8 weeks after you get the loan, then you can apply to have it forgiven. And if you get it forgiven, you don't owe anything. So it's sort of like the government is saying, here, listen, business owner, we're going to lend you this money to pay your employees, and you can be your own employee too. It applies to self-employed and 1099s. We're going to lend you the money to pay for 8 weeks, right? So try to get through this immediate crisis. And then if you do that, we're going to wipe it out. We're basically paying your employees for you. So that might help you understand a little bit better of how it's structured. Now, I did say 2.5 times average monthly payroll. So there's a little bit extra built in that can go toward rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. And those, but what so far the guidance is that you can't use more than 75% of the loan that you get toward, more than 25% toward those other non-payroll expenses if you want to get it all forgiven. So you have to be very careful about how you spend it. So I'm going back to what I said about tracking very carefully. If you get one of these loans, you really want to keep a good record of how you use that money, because that could affect your forgiveness. And it could eventually, it's possible the SBA will go and do spot audits of these and check and find out what business owners actually spent it on. So certainly they want to weed out fraud. So that may be something you'll need to report in the future. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. We'll get through this initial crisis. So with the PPP, it has the forgiveness aspect. With the EIDL, it has the grant. Now, if you get an EIDL and you use that money for payroll, you can't double dip. So let's say you get a $2,000 grant from EIDL, and you're going to use that to pay you and your partner, because you got to keep, you got to keep food on the table. So you're going to use that for payroll. So then when you get the PPP, you'd subtract out that $2,000 out of the amount you got that you want to apply for forgiveness, because you just can't double dip. You can't get two pots of free money for the same thing, right? And similarly, this is not my guidance, but the CPA that I did the webinar with earlier, he suggested if you're getting unemployment, then you might, once you get the PPP, then you might suspend your unemployment. I'd recommend you talk to your accountant just to make sure that's the right advice. The guidance is a little limited right now on that, but that might be an option as well. So when you're thinking and comparing these programs, you might think about, okay, well, how much did I make in my business last year? And you might use 2.5 months to kind of get a sense. There is a cap on PPP that if you paid yourself or any employee more than $100,000 in salary, you have to cap it at $100,000 for PPP. You don't have to make them take a pay cut. You don't have to take a pay cut. It's just when you calculate it, you can only put in $100,000 for that salary. And then based on that determines how much you get and then your forgiveness. So just keep that in mind. If you have a very especially lucrative business, then up to $100,000 in salary alone. There are other things that go into payroll, including group benefits like health insurance and retirement, etc. So those might add to additional compensation that would qualify under PPP and could qualify for forgiveness as well. So it's a little complicated. I know you have to wrap your head around it, but I'm trying to give you the conceptual idea of it. So just keep in mind, this is what it's designed to do, is to keep people paid for 8 weeks so that we can get through the bulk of the crisis, and then hopefully those folks can go back to work, and hopefully, things will start to recover. Now, there is a limited pot of money for both programs. Congress, you may have heard, is going back next week to try to vote on additional funds. And we know for a fact that certain lenders are prioritizing their own customers first and larger loan amounts first. And it may make sense for them, maybe easier to process. And from a bank standpoint, banks have always preferred to make larger dollar small business loans, right? I mean, that's because it's less, it's less, they have a lot of compliance costs. So a small loan isn't profitable. So the SBA has started to approve some fintech companies to make these loans outside of a regular traditional bank, which is where you traditionally get the SBA loans. So there are alternatives. NAV is partnering with some lenders, and you can certainly fill out a PPP application at NAV. And if we find a lender who's a fit for you, we will alert you, and then you can choose to go ahead and do the full application. Up to you, but I'm still telling business owners, hey, go first to the bank where you have your accounts, because that's the easiest first step, because they already have information about you as a business. So the requirements for them to verify, to weed out fraud, they've already met a level of that, right? Because you already have that relationship. So that would be the first place. You could also, the SBA has a page where you can look up lenders in your area. And then again, we have a calculator at NAV. If you just go to nav.com/SBA loans with an S on the end, you'll go to the calculator, and that helps you calculate PPP. And then if you want to, you can fill out the application with us, and if we match you to a lender, we'll let you know, and then you can proceed from there. So there's a variety of options to look at here when you're looking at PPP. So one more thing I think I want to cover is, and let me just check if we have any questions. One more thing I want to cover is that you can apply for EIDL and PPP. There's no exclusion. It's just, remember, you can't double dip. So if you get them, we don't know the time frame for EIDL right now. I'm hearing very different things. I'm hearing that the advances are supposed to start flowing very soon. But I can tell you from, when this all started, I went back and researched disaster loans in the past. And I looked at like Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Florence. And the fastest was Hurricane Florence. They were able to get some loans turned around in 7 days. But with Sandy, it averaged, I think it was over 40 days to get the loans. And now we're looking at a disaster that's nationwide, that has impacted so many small businesses. So I know no one wants to hear be patient, because you may have bills to pay, and you can't afford to be patient. But if you have questions about your disaster loan application, you can call the SBA. They do have a phone number. Some people are getting through fairly quickly. Some say it takes a few hours. Depends on, I guess, your luck of the draw. They have staffed it up, but you could check on the status of your application to see if they have it. They won't be able to tell you when it will be processed, but you could at least confirm that, it's been received. All right, Teresa, I think I've given the overview of the programs. Is there anything that you can think of right now that I might have missed that I should touch on?
No, I mean, you gave so much information. As a small business owner myself, I've been hearing a lot of conflicting information. Thank
Yes.
you so much for sharing all that information, Gerri. I know we all can benefit from it, because now I feel like I'm on the right track of understanding myself as well, and to help my clients.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So, Gerri, where can we find more information or get social media, connect with you, social media?
Well, if you can spell my name, I'm most active on Twitter these days. I haven't had to, I've like so many of us, I've been working 7 days a week. I haven't had time to hardly open Instagram at all. But my name is spelled GerriDetweiler. And you can certainly keep up with there. NAV, NAVSMB. So NAVSMB on Twitter. And I believe that's where we are on Instagram as well. And we have a Facebook page. We also have a Facebook page specifically dedicated to the COVID relief loans, our CARES Act Facebook group, which if you go to the NAV page, I'm pretty sure you'll find the link right there. And that's where business owners can talk to each other about their experiences. So people might post about, what's happening with their bank, or what they're hearing from their bank, or what they might be, what they might be wondering about. So there's a few places where you can connect. But ultimately, I think if you're interested in any of these programs, if you just go to nav.com/blog, BLOG, you'll see we have so many articles. I have an FAQs on PPP, FAQs on disaster loans. We have all kinds of articles on specific questions related to these loans, and we update those as soon as we get new information.
Great. And if they are a dualpreneur and they want to begin the process of building business credit, see if they have business credit, where can they go for that information?
Definitely go to nav.com/dualpreneur. So nav.com/dualpreneur, and that will put you right into a form where you can sign up for a free NAV account. Doesn't impact your credit scores, and it will get you, you can start seeing your credit, building your credit, etc. And I forgot to mention this, I'm sorry, but the PPP does not require a credit check. EIDL does, and there are credit qualifications, but PPP, there's no credit check whatsoever required. They might do it for verification purposes, but you don't have to have good credit to get PPP.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You're the best.